Hey, everybody over on the stream. We're checking out the Portland, Oregon protests and stuff. We have a bunch of people in chat on, including Metal. Say hi to Metal. And say hi, Metal.
I wanted plausible deniability. I didn't want to talk on stream. Hi, guys.
You have no choice. You've been astroturfed.
Yeah, you've just been screwed over with that.
Yeah. This is what we do. We cover real-life topics. We've covered plague with quarantined in stations. We cover politics with Super Tuesdays. We're covering civics, civic strife, all that stuff, because we're totally interested in anthropology, civics, history, and this is history being made here. So it's like day 3 or 4 or 5. How many days has it been?
Depending on how you went, 7.
7.
Oh, I thought it was, for whatever reason, I thought it was 8.
Yeah,
I don't know
7.
what. So it's 7.
No, this is 7 days and our second episode of civil disobedience in stations.
It's actually Uprising in stations now.
I mean,
But just want to say, 7 days.
So it was rioting in stations last time, and we had the good fortune of having people around that had cameras on some of the hot spots. So Commander A's was in Washington, D.C., and Naz was in Portland, and we had cameras there showing their stuff from what they were seeing, and it got pretty hot.
Yeah, he's decided to give his body over for the stream, which was very generous of him.
For the cause.
Yeah, I can tell you that was not a particularly comfortable effort, because I managed to get myself shot at with pepper balls, pepper sprayed,
CS gassed.
CS gassed. So, great time in DC.
Go ahead and share the stream, everyone.
Despite the fact that the crowd was, at the time, very peaceful, very quiet. Actually, no, I didn't say quiet. They were not rambunctious. However, immediately after was when the throwing stuff started happening, because naturally they pissed a whole bunch of people off.
So the crowd started throwing things at the police.
Mm-hmm.
After getting shot at with pepper.
With the pepper balls, the CS gas, like, they basically just unloaded into the crowd, like, completely unaware of who they were shooting. And, like, I'm far from an instigator, and if anybody saw the stream, like, I was not instigating anything. I was standing there with my camera, and let's just fire off stuff at you.
You're just being a model citizen, enacting your First Amendment rights, as far as you knew.
Yep, part of a peaceful protest.
So the same thing happened with Naz, same night. He got shot at. He didn't get I don't think he got the tear gas. He got the, he got flashbang.
He got flashbang. Yeah, he got flashbang.
And something else. Maybe it was tear gas. So he had to hurry out of there before the police marched on his position. So it was exciting. That was just a couple days ago. How many days ago was that? Is that 3?
Probably 3 or 4, I think.
Yeah.
Was that Friday night or Saturday night?
I think it was the Friday. It might have been a Saturday night, actually. So that was called Rioting in Stations, tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
But now it's turned into a full-on uprising, hasn't it?
Yeah,
apparently so.
It's full-blown civil disobedience time.
Maybe just for the thing is, everybody knows what we're watching because we're all watching it together across the world, probably. But how big is this thing? Like, Victor, can you put it in the context historically, like what we're dealing with here?
So historically,
how big a moment are we in?
So as far as momentum, all that stuff, the last time we saw nationwide protests break out this big was before any of us were born. It was in the 1960 Civil Rights Movement era. I think they said the last time a protest was this big was 1968.
Well, there was the protests for the undocumented people.
That actually is paling in comparison.
500,000 people in Los Angeles, but it was in a lot less cities and stuff.
Yeah, we're looking at saturation on epicenters like where I'm at in the Las Vegas metropolitan area,
My pleasure.
and where you're at in Southern California.
I'm not in Long Beach. But
No, you're not in Long
Right
Beach,
now we're
but
on West 6th and Alder
you know,
Street,
we're
downtown
from
Portland,
you and I
Oregon.
are from historically heavy immigrant
Probably got at
communities
least 10,000 people
and
down here right
recent immigrant communities from South and
About
Central
double
America.
what it
So
was
of course,
last night.
Nevada and actually it's Nevada, everybody, not Nevada.
These protests are not
So
stopping.
places like Nevada and
They're
Southern
gonna get
California, of
bigger
course,
and
we're going to
bigger
have
and
people
bigger.
turning up for stuff like that. But Wichita, Kansas, not so much. Another great example is Spokane, Washington. Hello. Not a big protest place.
And they're protesting there.
Yes, Salt Lake City, Utah, Boise, Idaho. There's places on the map that I was like, I will never see a protest in this place ever. And even Las Vegas does not have a big protest culture. During the for example, when we were talking about the Kids in Cages era, which is still ongoing, by the way, everyone, we'd maybe have 150 protesters out. I think it maxed out at like 500. Las Vegas right now has thousands and thousands of protesters on the Las Vegas Strip, unless it's a culinary local 226. Love you guys and girls. Solidarity is unheard of.
Yeah. So this hasn't been seen since the 60s on this scale everywhere.
Yep.
And organic, right?
Yes.
These are like locals protesting in local areas. All right, so we're going to cover it. We're going to have Naz there. You can see all the footage is Portland. That's what we're seeing. We also have a map back there. It looks like a heat map of some of the areas that are sending photographs through. What is that program?
Indeed, it is, my friend. It's it was a map that I found actually on that Saturday, and I was looking for a better map and just couldn't really find one. I think. Hang on, let me just find. It's a Snapchat map, so it's basically people who have Snapchatted in various different locations with relation to the to basically if it has something to do with protests, and the heat map is based on the amount of Snapchats, obviously.
Well, so let's get to it. Open it up to a group of people we have in here.
There's at least 10,000 people here.
I'm just going to say that Talking in Stations has always been about EVE Online. That's our main goal. But that is a very complicated game about society. And here we are with real lives in real society. And it's getting very interesting. So we're talking a lot about the kind of stuff that's going on in real life. It's a room full of people. And I'm really happy that Talking in Stations could be a home for people talking about politics and culture. And do it in a way that's informative and respectful. So carry on that tradition in this whole group. So let's just open up the discussion, and you guys can take it where you want to go.
Yep. The idea being, it's not a screaming match, and it's not a clutch my pearls, sort of conversation about politics. It's actually, looks to be informed and chilled for the most part. But yeah. What's been happening? Well, we could just I don't know if you guys want to sort of chill out and just listen to the stream for a bit. I don't know.
Yeah, let's do that or whatever. Victor has and Commander A's have a ton of information usually, so they can take it where they want to go.
Yeah,
can we hear some of that audio though? I want to hear what they're.
Oh yeah, I've got audio running for it. So Rory is running in the background a little bit. Can you confirm that, by the way, Matt, on the stream?
Yeah, it's working.
All right.
Now, for those of you who've never been to a protest and maybe shocked by the noise, even when everybody's being calm and peaceful, especially in an urban area due to the buildings, you get a lot of reverberating noise around, and it amplifies that noise. It acts like a boost. if you will. It's the same reason why in large metropolitan areas in the U.S. you have sound barriers on freeways.
Can Naz hear us?
No, I don't think he can.
Okay.
He had to, in order to go live, he had to drop off comms.
He must get tired holding that camera up.
I'm not gonna lie, my arm still hurts from from holding that camera up. Like, that's a lot of work. Like, I was really peeved at myself for not bringing like a selfie stick or something. Like, you know,
Don't bring a
wanted to be able to
selfie
get a little
stick.
bit more height up there, but
Someone will see that and be like, he has a deadly offensive weapon, get him.
He's got a baton.
Yeah.
to be fair, apparently my phone looked like a deadly offensive weapon that justified them firing tear gas at me. So, you know.
One thing that has scared me that I saw recently was, I think it was, where was it? Atlanta. You had 6 police, I think, that were fired instantly, again, because they pulled these 2 college students out of a car in a pretty violent way, tasing them, breaking their windows, dragging them out. And what I was struck by was how hard it was to understand what the cop was yelling. Like, because he had a mask on, a big gas mask, and he was just yelling like, what was it? Get out of the car, get your hand out of your pocket, or something like that. And I was thinking, like, I'd be freaked out and I wouldn't know what the hell was being shouted at me, so I wouldn't know how to take direction from somebody yelling at me like that.
He's just some random guy like near you, kind of going. You're like, what the fuck does that mean? I don't know what you're talking about.
Charlie Brown's parents, like, in crazy mode.
So there's another group of protesters on top of the 10,000 protesters that are down here already.
So, in other news, the DC protest is, looks like it's starting to heat up a little.
I have no idea how many people
They're currently rattling the fence. There's been a bunch of what looks like water bottles thrown over the fence. And, for those that don't know, the Font Park north of the White House has basically been the center of a massive protest, and depending on the night, straight up riot. And it's mostly been very civil. However, there's been a lot of tear gas and a lot of inappropriate action by the police.
That was the area that was, apparently cleared so that that Trump could go and walk up to that church, right?
Yes. Yes. They violently attacked peaceful protesters were violently attacked with batons, riot shields, tear gas, flashbangs, rubber bullets in order to clear way for the president to take a photo op outside of a church and say, we live in the best country in the world.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's actually been fallout for the Trump administration on that today, as one of the assistant secretaries. Well, okay, that's nice. I was going to tell you how it is, how that fallout worked, and the audience. But so the assistant secretary of defense, or one of them, has resigned over this.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oof.
So, yeah, this happened about 5 hours ago.
Was that the guy in fatigues that was out there? Like,
no, the guy in fatigues out there earlier that they were video broadcasting, that's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And there seems to be a little bit of confusion on those kind of roles in the U.S. military. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Joint Chiefs of Staff don't command anyone. They're the advisors to the civilian leadership, the Secretary of Defense, Army, Navy, Air Force. Sorry, Marines, you're not a branch. And Space Force.
I'm sure the Marines are fine. They make do.
Did you say Space Force?
Well, they're technically branch.
Oh my God, Space Force.
Yes, even Space Force. There was also another development. The entire Department of Defense took its threat condition posture up to Charlie today, and its force protection status posture up to Charlie today. So
it's one off maximum readiness, right?
Yeah, it's one away from the go to war button. And so what that does for those of you that may be younger and weren't like me in a 20-something in the military on 9/11, dating myself there, that's increased security along all military installations, an extremely heightened counterterrorism threat and force protection posture. If you're thinking of doing any kind of stunts around a military installation, around the gates and complexes, don't. And I say don't because during normal circumstances, you're usually at Alpha or Bravo, and deadly force isn't authorized for slight infractions. When you're at Charlie and Delta, deadly force is authorized for you in slight infractions. So if you're thinking of doing something stupid and you live near a military installation, please do not. The checkpoints and access points to all those facilities throughout the United States have been upgraded. Limited control on and off any military post, and it's ultra serious business.
So what was the deal with that guy, the Joint Chief of Staff?
The Joint Chiefs of Staff and the various Chiefs of Staff. So their whole role, Matterall, is to act as senior commissioned officer advisors to the civilian leadership, because this country has a tradition of civilian leadership of the military. So they report to the various deputy commanders, not deputy commanders, secretaries of defense and their various services. The actual decision makers are the civilian leadership. So, like, for example, today, it's a much bigger deal when an undersecretary or deputy secretary of defense for a specific system within the Department of Defense resigns than if, say, the Army Chief of Staff, General Milley, resigned.
Wild.
Because those people, those civilian leaders, are actually who are in control of the entire United States military. And this undersecretary saw the actions of the president regarding clearing out an area for a photo op as reprehensible, and he resigned over it.
Did he say that's what it was?
Yes, he did.
Oh, wow.
That was a bridge too far for him. And there's a tradition in government service, especially to the executive branch, you either keep your mouth shut or you resign.
I didn't know it had that kind of fallout. I knew that was,
Yes.
criticism by the clergy, but I hadn't heard that. That's pretty serious.
Yeah, the church was pretty pissed that they didn't approve the photo op at all, like in any way. There was no communication with them whatsoever that it was going to happen, and not only that, but they got on the news and were openly hostile about the fact that their church was used as a prop.
You also had another thing that's not near as big in the grand scheme of things, but still pretty big. The top senior non-commissioned officer in the United States Air Force just put out a tweet storm this afternoon. He actually did it over 2 days over all this, about what it was like to be an African-American man in this country and be the top enlisted airman in the entire United States Air Force, and sitting there, having his greatest fear, wondering if he's going to get a call in the morning that one of his African-American airmen was shot by police trying to get to or from work.
Well,
Still people are coming in.
he didn't resign though. He's still there.
Yeah, he's still there, but I kind of get that kind of stuff, because there was a point during my military career when I found myself out at a place called Fort Huachuca in Arizona, which, for any Customs and Border Patrol agents listening, you'll know as part of the Nogales Court in Tucson corridor. There was one point, and this was last decade, with the immigration issues, where things got so bad that the installation commander of Fort Huachuca had to bar all Arizona law enforcement from within a mile of the post, because a staff sergeant from one of the military intelligence training battalions was left face down at gunpoint for 6 hours by Border Patrol agents and the Tucson police while he was commuting to work while he was in uniform. Yeah, so this whole racism thing where somebody like me that's white just gets the benefit of the doubt and nobody else does. Anybody that isn't somebody like me doesn't. It's a real thing. I'm not trying to make other white people feel guilty about it. But, my people, we have a problem with acknowledging this kind of stuff actually exists. And we need to really start realizing it does exist and we need to confront it. It doesn't mean you need to wring your hands every day over guilt about it. Do something.
So what else happened in Washington, D.C.? There's a number of things that have been happening there, right? Didn't the president mobilize troops or something?
So the president has mobilized Army? I think it's Army, into DC to assist with security and ensuring that there are no incidents of rioting and or looting. That's after activating the National Guard, and all of the Federal Protective Services are also out there. The Park Police are out there. Everything's out there.
Constellus Group is out there.
Yesterday they were using helicopters flying at low heights in order to effectively blow heavy amounts of air at protesters to try and get them to disperse.
So in militaries, that's what we call a show of force demonstration. It's a pretty common tactic if you're in an area, say like Iraq last decade or Afghanistan. We would routinely, if we felt like we were outnumbered or threatened, call in a couple of F-16s to do a low-fly, high-speed pass show force, or an Apache, or even sometimes a Black Hawk would do it. My point is that is not normal. We're doing this in America stuff. That is more, hey, we're hearkening back to 2004, and this is a coalition provisional authority in Iraq.
So we have a question here from Deer Hunter's Odd. Asks, he thinks it's illegal for the American Army to do anything on American soil without Congress's okay.
So there are two exceptions to that. The first being the Insurrection Act, which, if invoked by the president, is allowed to use military force within the United States to quell a insurrection. That said, right now it's only in the U.S. Capitol, which the president does have the authority over, in order to call in. If he were to call into another state, he has to use the authorities under that. And it'll be highly interesting to see what the state's response is to the military being deployed to their state. I would guess most of them won't allow it.
The governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, already announced that he doesn't want the president's help. My governor, Governor Sisolak, has announced he does not require nor want the president's help. If things get that bad in my state, we have an entire cavalry regiment. We have a military police battalion. We have an air cavalry battalion on top of that. And we have a medical battalion. We're fine.
What you're saying is like Nevada's forces, I guess, National Guard can take care of Nevada's issues. Like you don't need federal troops to help.
No, we really don't. I mean, they're doing a great job in Reno. They're deployed out tonight on the streets of Las Vegas, and they've been deployed. The military police unit has been deployed out in Las Vegas, and it's going generally fine. If things got to a full-scale nightmare fuel level, I think we can handle it with 4 battalions of Abrams. I think we're good.
Jeez, well, I hope it doesn't come to that.
People like to make fun of the National Guard as an organization, but you got to understand something. National Guard is filled with a lot of former active duty people in its ranks.
Thank you.
So are there a U.S. Army Reserve if it came to that, but that's Trump's land, not
Pardon me.
So
not
it
the
looks like
states.
what we're seeing
you.
on screen
Excuse me.
right about now is
Excuse me.
there are speakers, and this is
Pardon me?
downtown Portland. I think that's the big plaza they have in the middle of the city. I wish Nas was here, but he has to stay off voice in order to show you the video and stuff. And so he's walking around showing you what some of the people are doing as they listen in as a big group. Looks like thousands of people in Portland. Nice to see so many masks on, which is, I don't know if they're doing it to hide their faces from the cameras, but I'm glad they're doing it because of the freaking pandemic that's going on at the same time as all this. This is a nutty time. We have a pandemic and massive hordes of people in close proximity. Luckily, they're wearing masks, and maybe that'll help diffuse some of the spreading of the virus. McLeod going.
We got a llama.
I think McLeod fell asleep.
He probably did.
I don't blame
we
him.
gonna
It's
say-
late in the United Kingdom.
You gonna say something, Meg?
Is that that is indeed a llama that I am seeing from the Portland stream.
It's just the guy with the
So-
beard. That's it.
So Portland has a mascot now. We
Oh,
have
that is a llama.
the civil disobedience llama.
Is it an alpaca? Is it an alpha?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because it's a little bit kind of pixelated for me. It could be an
It's a
alpaca.
llama.
Alpaca
Dude, I
looks-
gotta say, this is brilliant because now if they get hit with tear gas or flashbangs, it's animal
Yeah.
cruelty.
Yeah, then they hit the Pokemon.
It is an alpaca, so we don't have civil disobedience llama. I believe we have ACAB alpaca.
Alpaca, that's hilarious. So, for those that don't know, alpaca is a nickname for new players in EVE Online alpha accounts. That was nuts. That animal looked really friendly. You see that girl was giving him a big long hug, and he just was like, "I'm used to it. I'm used to it."
Yeah, they're generally fairly friendly. My little peanut gallery analysis as a retired senior army leader is this: the capital the president can control, and I think he's kind of having Julius Caesar fantasies, or maybe Augustus, where it's like, I've got Rome and I've got my little Praetorian Guard and my Legion from 18th Airborne Corps there now. I could see him pulling something like that because he doesn't really understand. And again, this is the danger of electing amateurs to office. He doesn't really understand the traditions, whether they're economic, social. He definitely doesn't understand between the covenant of trust between the professional officer class and the state, as evidenced by so many senior leaders, former chiefs of staff,
Trying to get somewhere where I could hear
retired
people,
MACOM commanders. Those are major commands. That's like division and corps level commanders,
Those guys don't
taking
come
to
back.
Twitter and just lambasting it.
And those guys don't come back, right? Once they're gone, they're just gone.
Now keep in mind the officers that are doing this, like
I thought last night was a lot, but
retired Chief of Staff General Martin Dempsey and Lieutenant General Champeau, and you name these people, they're actually putting all their pensions and benefits on the line, because when you're on the retired rolls and you were a commissioned officer, it's actually illegal for you to be critical of the President of the United States. You're still subject to the UCMJ in certain regards, especially in denouncement of public officials. Now, we do that under normal circumstances because we don't want a populist military leader instituting a full-on military uprising or coup to overthrow the legitimate civilian control of the military. C. MacArthur, for example, is a bad general that tried that. But yeah, these guys are actually putting their pensions, their careers, and their second careers if they have them, and their reputations on the line by speaking out like this. it would seem petty and arbitrary, but we know that this president is not above the petty and arbitrary to yank their pensions.
So what happened today with the bayonets comment, Ace? Did you hear that?
So, as part of the standard equipment, the military is bringing equipment that does have bayonets. So that's their standard issue. Like, it got a lot of heat because people found out what they were bringing in. And it was like, what do you need those for? And it's like it's just kind of the thing that they have. It would not be appropriate for them to use.
It literally, when you check your weapon out of the arms room, if you're in combat arms, meaning like infantry and stuff like that, literally attached to your rifle sling is your bayonet, and depending on your unit's standard operating procedures, you leg mount it, waist mount it, or whatever. It is standard military.
Oh, okay. So then people made a big deal out of something that...
Yeah. Well, that would probably be because of what the Ohio National Guard did with Kent State when they came in and 13 university students were shot and killed.
Wait, no, only 4.
I thought it was 13 total killed or wounded.
Maybe wounded, but there was only 4 that were killed.
Either way, you can see the imagery of them both on video and in stills with fixed bayonets.
Oh. By the way, I'm gonna look it up just to be real about it.
Absolutely,
I think.
So I can say some interesting imagery that's out there is that they have basically fortified around the White House, and that I would argue that Trump is probably the first president ever to be effectively barricaded in, and I wouldn't say he's the first ever to be brought down to the bunker, but I think he's the first ever to be brought down to the bunker for effectively a riot outside of the White House.
Crazy that we're there, isn't it? That's crazy that we're there.
Yeah,
if anybody thinks that it's not his fault, this is a guy that has continually poked the bear in terms of race relations in this country, and has attacked and used things out of the Southern playbook, almost literally directly. I don't even want to say
you're talking about Southern strategy, right?
Yeah, Southern strategy. Like, it's freaking crazy. On top of that, you go back to Charlottesville, where he wouldn't denounce the white supremacist groups. They're all good people, but then he starts talking about the protesters outside the White House as thugs.
Yeah, good people on both sides was the quote. Yeah.
The truth is, we haven't seen a siege like this on the White House since the Canadian forces and Her Majesty's forces sacked it in 1812.
They burned it down. But by the way, to Kent State clearing that up, that was 4 dead, 9 wounded, total of 13.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're both right, but wounded 4 fatally, unfortunately.
Well, the interesting thing is, given America's healthcare system, yes, if you lose your life, that's one thing. Gunshot wounds are not cheap to treat. I was saying in the last stream that reporter that lost her eye, she's basically got a Mercedes to pay off.
I heard that. I didn't quite understand what you meant by that, but...
Well, the thing is, the reason why I say a Mercedes to pay off is because you're going to need at least 3 surgeons for that corrective procedure. It's not a one-surgeon job.
It's going to cost you the amount of a Mercedes.
You're going to need an ophthalmological surgeon. You're going to need a plastic surgeon, and possibly an oral maxillofacial surgeon, depending on surrounding trauma and stuff like that. Those sinus cavities. Each one of those is going to bill you. The operating room time is going to cost. The recovery is going to cost. And people are like, oh, well, it's job-related insurance. Well, what people may not realize, and the only reason I know about this because my Department of Defense time, most, if not every insurance company, health or life insurance, has things like an acts of God clause, acts of war clause, and a civil unrest clause, whereby they are not fiduciary responsible for any billing incurred if it's for those reasons.
Yeah. The point is that these protests have been pretty hard on.
Hello, guys.
Hey, how you doing? That's
Brian, what I missed? How'd the stream come in? Was it okay?
Yeah, it's doing really well.
Excellent.
We're actually
It's doing
still streaming.
Okay, I took a break because I think they're going to end there. And there's just so many people, it's impossible to really get anything like audio as far as like speakers talking.
How many people would you think would say were there?
Oh, there was at least 10,000.
people, if not greater.
Like, I looked down the street where everybody came from, and there were still thousands of people down that way. I couldn't see the end.
So yeah, in case that wasn't clear, our field reporter is reporting that 10,000 plus on the streets of Portland right now, protesting police violence and the death of George Floyd.
Yeah, so that's Naz, and he's out there with the camera that you're watching. He, pretty peaceful. It looked pretty peaceful. Kind of somber. I don't see. How would you describe it, Naz?
It was pretty peaceful. It was pretty somber. Like, it was really kind of surreal when I was on the bridge and everybody was laying down, and the people in my section where I was stood up, and then I looked like further down, like 100 yards away, and they were still laying down, getting up, and there were people beyond them that were still laying on the ground that hadn't even, seen that there were other people getting up. It just went on forever.
So you guys crossed a bridge. There you are, yeah.
We're just looking back at it now.
Crazy.
What's that symbolizing, the laying on the ground?
That is the 9 minutes that George Floyd had a knee on his neck from the officer who murdered.
Oh, it's symbolic to this incident? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're still coming.
So, like, 10,000 people in Portland, Oregon just lay down on the ground for 9 minutes as a vigil to George Floyd.
Looks so eerie.
Yeah, it was pretty surreal.
So it's getting dark there now. We could see you and I are in the same time zone. It's like a dark blue sky right now. What's going to happen tonight, you think?
It looks like it's starting to dissipate. So I'm guessing that it'll more than likely be peaceful again. There might be 1 or 2 groups downtown, small groups that try to do something, but there's no curfew anymore. The mayor has lifted that. I did not see a single police officer the entire time during this march.
Wow, that is so strange, isn't it? I mean, because we're seeing some terrible stuff coming out of like Kentucky and DC, Atlanta.
Not a single cop, not a single federal officer was there in plain clothes. Nobody could fucking tell. But there was no uniformed police presence at all on any. Not even security guards like from buildings. There was nothing.
I thought it was kind of.
Let me just say this. That really tells you something about the psychology of the protesters being able to manage themselves in a huge group without security. That's an amazing thing on any day, much less such a tense time.
It's insane.
Yeah. So it goes to show also that when you're out here protesting the problem, and they're not antagonizing crowds or shooting them and attack. That people, they're the ones that are the problem. It's the cops.
Yeah,
amazing.
And I was gonna say we had a hell of a time last night in Las Vegas. Things got really dicey towards the end last night. But I just wanted to let those viewers know with the Las Vegas situation, the unfortunate incidents of last night and late last night came on the heels of 6 days of orchestrated police-directed violence against protesters.
How many people did you guys have watching?
What's that?
How many people did you guys have watching you? Your stream or whatever.
Oh, stream.
We're still streaming.
Yes, we are still streaming.
Oh, that's cool. Hi, people. How many are
23?
23.
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, we're not like the big streams or anything. This isn't our normal deal, of course. We're normally just your Resident Evil nerds who happen to have backgrounds that kind of know about some of this stuff.
Well, Glitch,
Yeah.
before you go back into Las Vegas, because that's going to take a little bit to cover, Glitch there says Philly was crazy. I didn't know Philly was a big problem right now.
Philadelphia cops suck. I've been assaulted by those assholes.
That's like I've eaten at that restaurant.
Yeah, it really is for me.
By the way, Naz, given your language on the stream, I'm sure there's going to be new openings in the Los Angeles Police Department Civilian Advisory Board. Or
Right.
Police Commission.
No, but what cities are hot spots? The DC that Commander A's is in.
DC's New
I didn't know
York.
about that.
DC is effectively a military state right now, so
Jeez.
Yeah.
you can't, like, conversely to Portland, you can't spit without hitting 15 cops. Like,
Isn't it crazy, the contrast?
Yeah, it really is. It's amazing.
I'm looking at a stream that literally the National Guard has set up a 10-foot tall fence around preventing people from entering Lafayette Park and are standing about probably 40 feet back from it in, full-on riot gear, riot shields. The crowd is, shaking the fence a little and throwing water bottles over the fence and stuff like that. But I think the police this time are just gonna. I think and hope that they're going to show restraint as long as the crowd is behaving.
By the way, I would like to take a moment on less protest direct news and remind everybody that today the Department of Justice under William Barr authorized a drug enforcement agency, your favorite feds responsible for the war on drugs, to conduct mass surveillance on anyone affiliated with the protester Black Lives Matter movement or periphery movements around it.
I don't know what the implications are of that, but we should come back to that.
You know what? Who cares? They're doing it anyway.
They were already doing it.
Yeah,
You would know about that.
they're already doing it. Now they're just doing it legally. Before they were doing it illegally. It's not like you can really stop them right now at this point. The Trump administration just does whatever the hell they want.
All right, what about Antifa? That's been brought up by Glitch there too. What can we say about Antifa and the way it's looked at by the president? Anything on Antifa? Because this is also
Whatever. They already had their minds made up like 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago. It doesn't matter.
No stabilization on this thing.
If they want to try to put people in prison, they can try.
Well, since I was being asked by Glitch, I'll see if I can answer this for you in a timely manner. But you're going to have to bear with me. I'm not going to address the Philly stuff because I'm not there. Police violence against peaceful protesters causes looting and violence on the other side. I can say as somebody who's occupied a couple of countries under force of arms, and I'll even quote the great warlord Donald Rumsfeld, who I once served. Looting is just a progression of governments to democracy. But other than that little cheeky joke, and yes, I'm quoting him there. So in any chaotic element, it doesn't matter if it's a war, civil strife, whatever, you're going to have opportunistic elements, as we saw with the Latin Kings in Chicago last night attacking rival gangs because they knew the police response would be degraded. You're going to have looters and just people that destroy property. That's going to happen no matter what. Hell, when we had right-wing protesters out, there were a few years back, there were people that were clearly not right-leaning people or, you know, principled conservatives and what have you, going around doing the same thing, but not on as much of a scale. You know, you're going to have this chaos no matter what. And I'm sorry to say, it's something that people need to understand is going to happen no matter what. It's not the protesters doing the looting necessarily, just like the 1990s riots over the beating of Rodney King. You had plenty of opportunists out there.
Who are the opportunists? People that come in, they join the big groups of protesters or vandals, and
They use the
look for
protests.
opportunities?
Yeah, you use the protesters as your cover. You blend in with them, and when the timing is right and the chaos starts, maybe the police start rushing lines, arresting, maybe some CS canisters are deployed, some flashbangs. You use those moments and the surrounding moments and the chaos and the panic as your moment. You're sitting there as a criminal saying, okay, I've got police maximum deployment and they're really worked out dealing with this thing. I've got protesters in the streets scatter into the four winds. Now's my moment to do like they did in a couple of cities, steal a couple of U-Haul trucks, smash some windows. Like, I don't know of a protester, and I've been to a lot of protests. I don't know of a protester that, for example, like the guys in Las Vegas, that bring diamond glass cutters with them to the protest. But I know plenty of criminals that will do stuff like that.
And it's funny you talk about you mentioned about the fact that they utilize certain you know, certain moments, specifically when the police are fairly busy with, you know, doing particular maneuvers or, you know, suppressing a crowd of people kind of thing. Because in that kind of sense, really, it means that if you're not actually, if the police aren't actually actively trying to disperse a crowd, they'd probably be able to both identify and help and help the crowd kind of actually intercept them in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
That'd be right.
there have
I
been cases of that.
Yeah.
2 nights ago in Vegas, there was a guy trying to do a smash and grab of a building, and a person I know from Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada and 2 of the people they were with grabbed this sucker and literally threw him at the cops.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of that. It's pretty inspiring, really.
Yeah, there was
risky to do that. Very risky to do that.
I really need to say this though, because I'm gonna, you know, as far as weapons grade and competence, what are you saying as far as glitch? The reason why there's pushback against police
Lots
is
of reasons.
because, there's tons of reasons, but one of the things to put it in your left-right paradigm that's going on here a little bit, I sense that, is because, for example, in Oregon, Washington, here in Nevada, basically throughout the world, throughout world history, being a police officer or even being a professional soldier when you're occupying a country is an authoritarian job, no matter how much you want to paint it up otherwise. So the natural allies of authoritarians would be an authoritarian right wing. And we've seen that play out in protest after protest, such as with the Proud Boys in the Pacific Northwest. We, in more recent events, we had 20 plus Proud Boys in Tacoma, or not Tacoma, why am I saying Tacoma? In Spokane, Eastern Washington. That's red meat country, you know, those are my people over there, you know, ranchers and stuff like that. 20 plus Proud Boys, all dressed in black, only identifiable because of their Proud Boy forearm tattoos, going and doing smash and grabs and saying they were Antifa. Well, for one, Antifa people don't really use the word Antifa. They use anti-fascist.
It's true.
For 2, Antifa
It's like saying,
is
I'm
not
anonymous.
an organization.
Yeah. I'm anonymous. Yeah, but
It's
you have
me.
a face. Oh yeah, good point. Fuck.
Yeah, exactly. It's stuff like that. And
Well, Anonymous works the same way. The hackers, they're not actually a group. It's more like a movement. And I think Antifa's
Like
the same way. You don't.
Sort of a We Are Legion situation.
I'm out of my element talking about Antifa though. You know some Antifa guys, don't you?
I know a lot of
everyone in this room is
anti-fascists.
Antifa.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay,
at the risk of calling us all terrorists, as Trump would classify us, I believe that everyone in this room is anti-fascist.
Yeah, unless you're fucking a Nazi or something like that.
Yeah.
If when looking at a World War II kind of film, you're like, yeah, fuck those Nazis up. You're an anti-fascist.
That's pretty much
so.
That's very specific. Antifa, anti-fascism.
I've got something that's very similar to our day and age.
Antifa is not actually a group. It's a coalition of different ideas, but it's no leadership. There's no like weekly meetings or anything like that. It's
the abbreviation of a word. That's what it is. That means anti-fascist. That's what it is. That's what Antifa is.
So it's not
anybody who's anti-fascist. It's not an organization. No.
It's like saying that agnostics is an organization.
So I was going to say, if you're going to do the World War II type comparison, the war itself isn't really a good one. You have to look to the predecessor era of Germany, the Weimar Republic, where anti-fascist action actually kind of came about in its modern sense. And the reason why it did was because you had authoritarian right people like the DAP back then. It wasn't always the NSDAP. That's after Adolf co-opted two different right-wing movements. Were actually teaming up with local law enforcement to crush any sort of left-leaning or even center-left sentiment in the country. And when I see these protests, and I'll give you a great example before any of this. I was at a protest in 2016. It wasn't an anti-Donald Trump protest or anything. It was actually during Pride Month, which we're in right now. Sorry, I had to cough, so I had to mute. And I literally watched, and I hate using the word literally, I sound like a millennial even though I'm Gen X.
All right.
So I watched 6 Las Vegas Metropolitan Police officers from Convention Center Area Command watch as one of our LGBT activists was stabbed 4 times in the leg, and do absolutely nothing. An hour later, the same person came back and stabbed another person. And as myself and about 10 other people tried to crowd around that person to help them, LVMPD beat all of us up. I took a reverse strike to the back of my leg. I took 3 strikes to my bad shoulder, which is my left, because I had a gunshot wound in it from Iraq, and it doesn't really work that well anymore. Stuff like that. You will see police routinely side with right-wing organizations.
Oh, yeah. I can talk about that in links for a long time, but I kind of want to change it up a little bit.
Okay.
Let's talk about some solutions, because you can't solve a problem unless you got some solutions. So what do you think are some solutions that can be done about what's going on?
Okay, a more nuanced one that hasn't been talked about is even when law enforcement leadership, like police chiefs, are hired on to be reformers, they are blocked by city councils, county ordinance, and state-level police bill of rights from doing so. That's one thing, is get rid of police bill of rights laws in states. Allow police chiefs to actually enact the reform that a lot of them truly want to enact.
Okay.
Didn't something came up today with Congress, right? They're drafting some legislation, or at least moving in that direction.
Oh, yeah? What does it say?
No. Hayes, do you know? Did you hear about that?
So there was a little bit of Congress action today that would have came, I believe, out of the House and went over to the Senate and was dead on arrival because Mitch McConnell believes that it doesn't address anything or hold anybody accountable, which missing the point for 500 on his part. But effectively, what it was meant to do was to denounce the president for the use of force on peaceful protesters for his little photo op thing. Which the whole purpose here is that people need to be held accountable regardless of who they are for their actions. And seeing as it was his little stunt to pull, they need to be held accountable for it.
Here's another one that we can do. I know it's still cliche to call them internal affairs, but their nomenclature
To not
now
be internal.
is, yes, professional standards bureaus. What you could do, and I've heard the whole thing of, oh, let a state agency handle investigations on local officers. And I would say no to that for the reason is if you're still enforcing the same kind of laws, civil and criminal, you're going to always have that buddy-buddy relationship that you're on the same team. Eliminate that. Give them limited power to only look at law enforcement. Don't just make them investigative. Put them out there in U-boats, that's undercover cars and trucks, actually watching the cops, looking at them around scenes and stuff like that, seeing how they act and react to the public and if they're actually following their duties.
Oh yeah, I've done that.
Policy. Yeah, but did you have any teeth when you did that?
I had friends who were lawyers, so yes.
Okay, so that's like a long, drug-out process from hell. I mean, for example, what you would do, ideally, is say you have an officer from this new bureau. We'll just call it the State Professional Standards Bureau, and all they do is monitor law enforcement for misconduct. So you see this Professional Standards Bureau officer, he's out patrolling or she's out patrolling, and he sees a color of law violation, a civil rights violation, a violation of the department's use of force policy. He can roll right up on that scene, identify himself, and arrest the cop. Done.
I mean, as much as I'd love to see that, as much as I'd love to see that, I really don't think that cop would submit to that in any way, shape, or form.
You said solutions. That's actually a solution, not a habit.
No, yeah. But that's not going to happen. Like, that would not happen realistically.
Well, realistically, we said we'd never have a fascist police state, but here we are.
Well,
welcome to the District of Columbia.
We're not quite there, I don't think.
The trajectory is definitely on the way.
You don't get a dictator overnight.
Well, this is pretty bad for what's interesting to me is all this is happening in I wouldn't call it a vacuum, but you don't have external pressures like you do with wars and stuff. So
what we need right now is to have every country in the world freaking just calm down on the U.S. at once.
Yeah, actually, that would be one thing. As much as I'd hate to see it, sanctions, tariffs. If you really want to get nasty, do what the United States has done for years.
I mean, you do it, and then what happens is it puts so much economic strain and pressure on the president that he would look so bad.
So I really want to address Glitch, because I think Glitch is coming from a good place in text, and I understand him, and I want him to understand me. So in my family right now, I have 2 Medal of Valor recipients from Las Vegas Metropolitan Police. I have a retired chief of police. I have a retired deputy special agent in charge for the Joint Counterterrorism Task Force. I've been a cop in Iraq. I've been a cop in Afghanistan. I've trained law enforcement. I get where you're coming from, but the few bad apples analogy doesn't really cut it anymore. The job is difficult, and I understand the split-second decisions because I'm professionally trained in the continuum of force. And what I see is not split-second decisions. I see people taking the easy way out. And from the time I was a little bitty, 18-year-old private in the Army to the time I retired and everything, one thing always sticks with you. Actually, a few things that were kind of my guiding things. One was it's easy to do the wrong thing and it's harder to do the right thing. two, what you tolerate, you validate. And that second one is a big problem we have in law enforcement. Where
big problem in general.
Yes, sorry, but we're talking about the cops right now. All lives matter. I had to make that joke. But when you have a training officer system where you have one officer that may be corrupt or prone to abuses, and the next 1 to 2 years of that boot's life, and determining whether or not he's going to be a professional police officer past the boot stage is that one cop's sole determination, that's problematic. And the reason why we can't talk about things anymore is very similar. If you remember during, I'd call it my heyday, which was Iraq Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. What happened when civilians tried to criticize the war in Iraq? They were shut down. They were spied on through organizations like the Department of Defense's counterintelligence field activities.
Oh, yeah.
Lambasted. They were mocked, ridiculed. They were thrown out of their jobs in some cases for not being patriotically correct.
Oh, yeah, I know.
That's what happens
I
when you
lived
try
and
to
breathed that here in Portland, Oregon.
And
like, I saw that happen everywhere to people I know. Like, that was a very real.
And then go try to talk to a street cop, depending on your jurisdiction. You know, just have a normal conversation with a cop. 9 times out of 10, it isn't going to happen. They're going to tell you to piss right off, or you're going to find your ass getting beat, or you're just going to be rudely dismissed. And they're going to go back to their squad and their precinct, and they're going to make fun of you and not really think of it seriously, because there are no repercussions for these people. There are none.
Naz, I want to explore a bit more. You were saying that you're familiar with what they call it, total information, where the government had a new budget and new priority to make sure that a terrorist strike never happened again. What happened in the aftermath of 2011 that you know about?
Well, basically,
2001.
The federal government gave grants to local police jurisdictions, and they bought a bunch of surplus military hardware, and then just basically armored up with weapons and helicopters and APCs, armored personal carriers, like just tons of stuff. They militarized themselves. They basically became like paramilitaries essentially. And it was all in the name of defense. From what? Right? From what? Like their own people, like essentially. Because they just use it as an excuse. Whenever you can use something as an excuse and capitalize on it, you know, people do it. You see it all the time. And that's what happened. And, you know, it's unfortunate that that's what it took for that to happen and how it unfolded. But, yeah, that's how it happened. And in the name of safety, you know, in the name of the public good, they use and abuse tragedy for their own personal gain so that they could have control. That's what it's about, control and power.
Well, I mean, their mandate was to make sure that we didn't get attacked again. And we're not looking at something that is easy to identify. So it needs a ton of infiltration, and we're an open country. We have people that come in. What about all that?
Yeah, we're open, but there's also this thing called the Constitution, and you know, people have the right to privacy, you know, which has been eroded to the point now where, you know, you really don't have any privacy anymore.
Giving it away, though. Like,
I mean, you give it away when you say allow your microphone and camera to be used on your phone for an hour. Like, you literally just give it away.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it works these days. It doesn't say, you know, like, oh yeah, I can't, like, this company can't do that because, you know, you have the right to privacy. They're just like, oh yeah, allow, forfeit.
Yeah, it's a whole interesting aspect to the convenience of technology, also kind of signing away certain rights of privacy and stuff like that.
Yeah, and people are getting so used to it now.
Yeah, that is the incestuous public-private partnership relation.
Yeah,
Right.
It's just like people are just so used to it now that most people don't even know what privacy is anymore.
Right.
which is scary if you think about it.
Well, if you think it goes to the next level, which I hope it doesn't, and this Portland demonstration that we just saw was just like a breath of fresh air. How big a group can be and conduct itself. I even saw people throwing their trash into trash cans. Walking.
Oh, yeah.
In this, it's amazing. Like, that's amazing that people have that kind of like civic responsibility in them. That's what you want to see. But people have to listen to it. Or
Portland is a different place, man. Like, from a lot of places in the country. Like, it's just one of those strange, unique, different places that does a lot of these weird things that end up happening that kind of just, like, it affects people, just like you, what you just said, like who would have thought that was going to happen?
Well, but let's take it to the next level, right? Because we're looking at mass uprising in the United States right now. It's pretty hairy in Philadelphia and New York. Again, in Louisville of all places. Not Louisville, was it? Was it Louisville or Kentucky?
Yeah, well, I support a diversity of tactics. Like, that is my opinion. And if people have their way of going out there and protesting and being pissed off and vocalizing and showing their rage and anger at how they've been oppressed by the police state that's been going on all their lives and generations before, like, they have that right. And, it just goes to show you, like, the angry mob, the police, and what the extent that they'll go through to make sure you shut the fuck up.
Well, but aren't they frightened, and isn't it a confusing situation? Like,
oh, you bet they're scared. You bet your ass they are scared.
Well, I'm not calling them cowards. I'm just saying it's a situation with a lot of tension, a lot of potential for violence and harm to themselves. Like,
they're afraid of losing their grip. It's all about control and power, like I said earlier.
You think even to the foot soldier, even to the even to the policeman.
Oh yes, it is, because they're protected by that blue shield.
They're protected by that position of public trust.
Right.
Except people don't trust them anymore. So what do they got?
I want to trust them. I want to trust them. Like,
so do I.
But you can't. The reality is that you got pulled over and a cop came up to your window and had his hand on his belt, right on his gun. You would be freaking.
But there's a responsibility. Like, if I get pulled over, I know that I'm not going to make any sudden moves. They're going to blast my car with light. I'm going to put my hands on the steering wheel so he can see.
You don't know that.
I'm making.
You don't know that.
You seriously don't know that.
They could think you're someone else. You probably fit the description of someone else. And then, they pull you out of your car and start kicking your ass. You don't know what could happen.
Well, or even like Philandro Castile, and mind you, this and I was kind of surprised at this at first, but then racism reared its ugly head on this. Philandro Castile. There's so many people, especially on the right, that are big Second Amendment advocates. They were dead silent with the murder of Philandro Castile at the hands of a police officer. He had a valid concealed weapons permit. He did everything he was supposed to do. He informed the officer straight away. The officer told him to get out his ID. As soon as he went to get out his ID, the officer pumped a bunch of rounds into him.
Yeah, that was terrible.
And I'm not going to go into the graphics of it, but that's what we mean by you can follow every order of the officer. And if you're a black man, you're going to die.
Well, I'm not saying okay, I get it. There are no guarantees.
And if you're a Hispanic man, even if you're middle class or wealthy, you're going to die.
Man. I'm the actual Hispanic man.
I know you are Hispanic upper middle class man.
I got a big H
and
on my
you know
chest.
What? You're just as likely to, well, not as likely as black people, but you're a lot more likely to die at the hands of a police officer than I am.
Yeah,
even though I'm white, for 10 years now, and it doesn't happen very much. I've gotten 2 traffic pullovers with a warning. The first thing I do is roll down my window, and I put my hands outside the vehicle, slowly facing the officer.
Really?
Because, yes, even I do it. Because as much as I laud the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and the NHP, they're not so bad at it, but as much as I laud LVMBD's professionalism, they do have a very Wild West mixed with Judge Dredd attitude. Now, we've heard nationwide recently, and I really do want to touch on this, on an officer from the Convention Center Area Command, that if you're an Eve nerd, you've dealt with CCAC officers. He's fighting for his life right now, 29 years old. Officer Nicholas. My childhood friend is his supervisor.
Oof.
It's the second officer he's lost in the last 12 months. And I feel absolutely horrible for what happened to him. Now, am I going to put the trigger pulling on the suspect that's in custody right now, 20-year-old, that just pretty much ruined his life? Yes. But you know what I'm also going to put it on? Those protests wouldn't have happened if agencies, including LVMPD, would have instituted reforms years ago that other departments of justice begged them to do instead of just blowing them off. We've had our own, back right when the FBI took over, there was a big thing in Sheldon Adelson's newspaper, the Las Vegas Review-Journal, about Nevada's killer cops. Because Las Vegas, for all its professionalism and everything, had a reputation of murderous cops that would be let off time and time again, and we still have. Since that era, since FBI oversight left the department, we've had 7 very suspicious deaths that have been ruled homicide by police officers, and absolutely nothing happened to those officers. In particular, I've talked about this privately, we had one officer that killed 2 people here in Las Vegas. It was ruled a bad shoot. He was disciplined, he was fired. His appeal was denied, but he wasn't prosecuted. But because and this leads into how can we stop this? He then went to a police department, an agency in Colorado. He killed another person there. He was fired, not prosecuted.
Oh, I found the police.
Then he went to Montana and he killed 2 more people, and finally he was prosecuted, but given a suspended sentence.
So I guess what you're saying is it's been going on a long time. Like
It's been going on since time immemorial.
Part of the culture is led to where we're at today.
We have to remember 2 things. One, I know the LAPD's motto of protect and serve is catchy. That has nothing to do with policing. And 2, state and local police have been used for racial oppression in this country for literally ever, without exception. Yeah. We always have to keep that stuff in mind. And a third thing we have to keep in mind is something I alluded on earlier, which is a lot of times police leaders are not truly in control of their departments, but who is in control of their departments are city council members that are infamous for like what they're doing tomorrow in Las Vegas, which is outlawing purses and backpacks on the Las Vegas strips and all sorts of other civil rights curtailments because of the shooting that have nothing to do with this shooting or the protests. And they make laws, and the community makes laws that make it impossible for chiefs of police to do the reforms they want. From police protective associations, city councils, I touched on it earlier, police officers' Bill of Rights. Yeah. Does anybody here, for example, remember the guy that they labeled Coward Cop from the Route 91 Harvest Festival shooting? The guy that just kind of froze up in the stairwell.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
He is now a sworn officer again with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. The PPA went to bat for him. They fought for him for a couple of years, and he's now back on the department patrolling the streets.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, a couple things. One is Glitch had to take off, but he said they killed Biggie. And no, Biggie was actually, unfortunately, met his demise in Los Angeles.
Yeah, they killed Tupac.
Well, the police didn't kill him, but...
Yeah, Tupac died in Vegas, yeah.
Yeah.
That Vegas.
But I don't know. I don't know who was involved with that, but... the other thing is...
anyway.
Yeah, Deer Hunter Zod says, up here in Canada, we get a few American doctors who have lost their license to practice in the U.S. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, they just reapply.
Yeah,
Well,
you
anyway.
can do that if you lose your license in one country. You can reapply in another one.
So the point is, there's a systematic problem. There have been attempts to fix the problems in the past. They've been blown off. And
Yeah, ignored
militarized,
even.
Yeah, and militarized our police force with more and more surplus military hardware, basically.
Yes, and people can say that more training is the answer. It really isn't.
It isn't. They get enough training. They get tons of training.
Yeah, they just don't use it. And
it's the types of people that they bring in.
Well, and people will say education is the key. We need to have officers with a higher level of education. To that, I will vehemently say, no, you don't.
90% of all Portland cops have a 4-year degree. You know?
Yes.
And they beat the shit out of people and tear gas the shit out of people, like this past week. And they're educated.
Yes, NYPD, a bachelor's degree is required to be a sworn officer on the NYPD. Las Vegas Metro.
What the heck do they get a degree in?
Usually criminal justice, pre-law, social work, which is hilarious.
It's not just 4 years of baton work.
No, it's not just 4 years of. It's not 4 years of hey, I really love Depression 228.
Oh, hold on. So,
hey, hold.
I'm going to take a picture really fast. I'm standing above a bridge where there's all these cops, and they're driving off right now. There's like 6 or 7 cop cars. They just put on their gas masks, and they're heading towards downtown now.
Well, and here we go. And this is something I touched on earlier. And it's what I've called police performance pieces. You have the news hours for the local news, and local news channels are always pro-cop. And they'll play nice during the anywhere from 4 to 6 o'clock news segments. But once they know those local news coverages aren't going to be live, they're not going to break into it. They'll do their little feeder stuff at 11 o'clock. It's between those hours, between about 6:30 p.m. and about 10:30 to midnight, where this is where the fun begins, kids.
Yeah, they're gonna do some shit downtown tonight for sure.
Well, that's where all the people were downtown.
Yeah, there's still people downtown.
And mind you, Portland is not under curfew right now. There's no reason, at least according to our field reporter, we're going to call you that right now, that this has gone violent or out of control in any way, shape, or form.
There's no curfew. That's interesting.
Well, I think
so the mayor who was also the police commissioner in Portland revoked it last night. He didn't renew it, so he was like, "Oh, it's fine." But the police,
they're like, "We ain't having that."
Fun, right? Yeah, they're gonna blow this thing wide open, and they're gonna make it way worse.
I don't know if anybody knows this, but the daughter of the mayor of New York was actually detained and arrested and cited by the New York City Police for.
She was like an hour later. I bet she was gone like an hour later.
Of course.
That train wants to eat you, Naz.
But then, I know that that train is that's the police suppression choo-choo train.
Yeah, that's psych ops right there. Anyway, the it looks like Portland may not come to a happy ending after all. Although you had thousands and thousands of people behaving themselves peacefully for most of the evening. Looks like the police might move into downtown Portland now.
So the funny thing is about stuff like that, like the performative pieces that I was talking about. I was sitting there watching a chief of NYPD who has a horrible relationship with the community. His department has a abysmal relationship with the community. Sitting there taking a knee, holding hands. I even said on Twitter, I can't help but think, like, dude, are you actually looking for targets for later or what? Or like Las Vegas Metro, third night of the protests, when everything was, oh, it's all peaceful and calm. And this person made this little TikTok video of the police officers taking a knee, and it got syndicated on all the local network shares. Oh, police support the protesters. Oh, watch that whole video instead of the first 15 seconds. And this conclusion was like, no, they're not taking a knee to support you. They're kneeling down to put on their gas masks, and they're getting ready to wreck you.
Yeah. That's what they do.
That's hilarious.
They're designed to not protect you. They're designed to like sort of protect like
The
rich
system.
people.
Yeah, and rich people. I've talked before about how people will lament, well, why are they destroying their own neighborhoods? Because the first thing that happens is the police know what the property values are, and they set up their cordons that way.
Oh, here go the police. Lots of them.
All right,
Are you streaming right now?
give us an update. No, he has to talk first. Oh yeah. So we're seeing it live, can we? We'll try to get a camera up for it live.
Yeah, I need to add it to the scene and everything, but yeah, I'll get it up ASAP.
Well, McLeod does that. Looks like
Just for a second.
A's had to take off.
Hey, you've heard a lot from us tonight. What is the mood like, and what's going on in Southern California right now?
Oh, Los Angeles today. I live not too far from Santa Monica in Venice. There was a protest, or march or action, whatever you want to call it, in Venice, and it was, from what I could tell, it was peaceful there on the corner, and you even had Batman Ben Affleck there, and so that went off. It looks like okay.
Ben Affleck's an asshole.
Well, he's still Batman, whether he is or isn't. But anyway, so that was like kind of a, what I think people are, celebrities are getting the idea, like, I better put in my time, because I'm starting to see tweets about like who's showing up and who's not to these protests as far as celebrities go. So I think he might have been like, it's time to put in some time. I better get my face out there. I don't know. But I think Los Angeles today was a little calmer than yesterday. It was a little hairy, and the day before that, it was really hairy. It was helicopters.
Cop walking around, board, blocking the bridge.
Yeah. So in LA, it was a lot of sirens, and I'm not too far from a station, right? I'm about a mile away from a big police station on the west side. So there's a lot of sirens. They go about every 2 hours. I would hear some series of sirens, and then the helicopter about 4 or 5 times a day. And today a bit less than that. So I think it's actually lightening up, but that's my impression from being hunkered down because of a virus. So I'm not out there on the street protesting. Oh, I did talk to a friend who went to the beach, and at 3:30. By the way, our curfews are like early. They're like at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I was shocked about that.
Yeah, we get.
Yeah, that's crazy. Why?
They don't want it to get dark on the police, I think. I don't know what their reasons are, but that would be my assumption. So they want 2-3 hours to make sure everybody gets out. But all day long, not all day long, but at least 3 or 4 different times my watch or my iPhone will actually buzz with an alert from the county, basically saying stay indoors or whatever. So we're getting told what to do, and I mean, that's fine. But I haven't seen anything on my street at all, and I'm near a couple boulevards and haven't seen anything on those, but I've heard of a few spotty things here and there. But it's not bad. Most of the stuff has been peaceful protesting with some opportunists. I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah, there's some opportunism, but you'll see it nationwide, what I was talking about with the local media. The local media, frankly, has done a pretty bad disservice to their communities, at least in the Vegas area throughout this.
They always do.
Because it's all very performative, especially since we had an officer shot. And like I said, I feel horrible for this guy. But even before any of that happened, it turned into a bunch of performance pieces by police leadership here in Southern Nevada. I'm looking at the feed for like 8 News Now, News 13, News 3.
Well, the corporate
Fox
media,
Affiliate.
they spin their propaganda all the time.
Well, I'm
You
not
know,
even
all the
talking about
time.
the big national stuff. I'm talking about the local stuff.
I'm talking about the local stuff too. Like they work
Oh yeah,
together
that's
because
right. What was the name of that reporter that we were watching her stream? The
I
first.
forget, but she was
that was the one who had
she
the
was Colin
flashbang thrown
Six.
in.
She's a Colin 6 reporter from Portland, Oregon. Yeah, you can go.
Yeah.
Elaborate. Go ahead.
Is it
Yeah, she
Sinclair,
was.
Sinclair Media? Is
Oh
that the
yeah, we have
connection?
Sinclair people.
Oh no, she's not Sinclair. Coin is not. Coin is a local station. Channel 2 here is. That was 6.
Sinclair being a conservative owner of many, many local news stations.
Yeah, like they bought out the NBC affiliate here, News 3. Sinclair did.
Yeah.
But
they
all I
bought
see
up.
from my local networks here is things like raiders experience powerful peaceful encounter amid protests, stuff like that. And while I'm at
Oh
the NFL,
no!
what?
Flashbangs going off downtown.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, in our very, very tiny audience, is exactly what I've been talking about as a use of force professional for a while.
Well,
It's like
couldn't-
Iraq, right?
You couldn't
We
have
could
had a better
always-
protest.
Yeah, we could always rely, like all of us being the multinational forces in Iraq and Coalition Provisional Authority, we could rely on you, the American people, and even the international community to be outraged at something we did or failed to do for about 3 days. And then we could go right back to what we're doing. And we knew that. We're like, Americans, it was often said by our public affairs officers in the Army. It's like, yeah, our fellow Americans aren't that bright, and they've got the attention span of gnats. This will blow over. And every time it did. I mean, even... And, you want to see and externalize something where we have a horrible incident with somebody in authority and absolutely nothing changes. Abu Ghraib is a great example. All the tragedy that happened there and all America being shocked, Abu Ghraib never closed. I was throwing detainees in there 24/7.
You might know my brother. Not that he was a detainee, but he was a soldier that was there too.
Yeah, Abu G, Camp Cropper, all the fun places. And your brother.
Yeah, but you know that jail though, the actual building itself was housing soldiers inside for most of it, except for the really bad prisoners, because it was a wall from all the mortar shells that were going. It was protected
walls, but
they kept all the people outside.
Yes, they did.
And you know what they did? Like they had them tents and they had a cot and they had blankets, but it was all muddy and it was freezing. And what they would do is if somebody wasn't cooperating, they'd take away the tent that they were in. Yep. And then they'd take away their blanket. And then they would take away their cot. And then they'd be like, that's it. And so people were
forced positions and blindfold naked twister.
So people started riding one day, and there was a rock that got thrown at one of the military, one of the soldiers out there. And what did they do? They blasted his head in half. And like 3 others.
Yikes. All right.
And that's the kind of
let's not get into the graphic detail. I'm not even doing that.
Let's finish the Abu Ghraib. Let's finish the Abu Ghraib talk later.
Well, it matters because we brought the thing is, here's why it matters, and I'm not going to dwell on that part. And it's one reason why I say people like me, right? Professional soldiers, or like my wife, professional soldier. We shouldn't go into law enforcement once we're out. Because what compounded a lot of the stuff around 2008 or so after was that you would have mid-career guys or early career guys with 1 or 2 tours in Iraq or Afghanistan come back and they get hired on the local department straight away.
And they get antsy.
Yeah, and so you have what you would call a conflict of training. Like, think in media production. Let's take it out of the force thing. Stuff like that, or coding, or any job you have. If you're taught to do things one way and it's drilled in you very intensely for anywhere from 4 to 6 years. And you go to another company as a coder, and they're like, that's not how we do this stuff here. But you know what? We should start being really intense. That's how you get interns dying.
My point that I was going to make with that was that you have people like that coming back from wherever they're stationed, and they come back with that kind of training and those kind of things that they do to people, and then they become cops. What do you think they're going to do to people that are in cities when they come back like that? They're going to be aggressive. They're going to escalate force because to them,
one form of training overrides the other and is much stronger.
And and because they're protected, they just do it over and over and over again.
Not only that, man, but people like me are used to an ultimate protection stance that no matter what we do is going to be justified. And we bring that into a law enforcement agency. We bring that cultural thing in, which may be fine or may not be fine for a wartime footing as a soldier, but it certainly isn't good or fine or acceptable in any measure for a professional law enforcement officer.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry for going off topic. We were talking about solutions, trying to find solutions to things. But, it's kind of important to examine, the causes so you can find solutions. So that's why I brought that stuff up.
Yeah,
So
totally. I thought it was interesting. Okay, so we got to wrap up, though. Wanted to change gears a little bit to politics because there's an election going on in Iowa, of all places. And there's
what kind of election?
Famous representative named Steve King, right? He was admonished, I believe, at one point.
Stripped of his positions and his committee roles.
Yeah, I forget
after making some racism.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that fits right in. Anyway, he looks to be losing his seat. I think it's his seat, but there's an election, and his opponent has gotten about 47% of the vote, and he's gotten about 33%.
Oh,
now,
man.
Is this their general, or is he getting dunked in the primary?
I'll have to check for final results. 1 second.
In elections here in Nevada, we have our former Attorney General right now, Adam Laxalt, leading a GOP effort to crush mail-in ballots.
Oh, yeah. It's been called. He's lost. So
he has lost a general or a primary?
This is... I can't tell.
Because if he lost a primary in a way, that would be even bigger news than losing a general.
Oh, yeah. I think this is a primary. So he lost the primary.
Wow. And we have to look at what his opponent is like as well.
Yeah,
while it may not be as bad as Steve King, it may be a whole can of weird worms.
Randy Feenstra. I don't know who that is. So we'll see.
Don't know.
Yeah. But to see him go down, I mean, he was somebody who was recognizable, did a lot of news coverage and stuff. Infuriating to listen to for me, from my perspective. But he was definitely someone who got a lot of airtime on television.
And speaking of that, when they're honest about it, I think one of the worst things as far as the political aspects of doing this is somebody has an epiphany about something that may not agree with our position or a position of the opposing party. I think it's rather destructive in politics to, especially for career politicians, to go back and say, well, in 1987, you said this, so we don't believe you. I think that's rather destructive politics and unproductive in politics.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. But the big news tonight, Steve King from Iowa's 4th District goes down in a primary to Randy Feenstra. I think the final was... I just had it here. Yeah, 46% to 36%. So... wild. Okay. And there was a couple other candidates. That's what fills out the rest of the percentages.
Yeah, so COVID and mail-in ballots, that's kind of getting interesting in my state. As I said, our former, our deposed Attorney General, Adam Laxalt, is leading this charge not only in the state of Nevada, but regionally, to contest any mail-in ballot initiatives. And it's getting pretty ugly. I mean, some of us have already sent off our ballots or getting ready to. The deadline is the 9th.
Oh, wow. Speaking a little bit more about elections, this is primary season, and I don't know who had primaries today for Democrats, but Joe Biden still hasn't clinched the nomination necessarily because he has to have, I think, basically 1,991 points to win, or delegates, and he does not have that yet. He has 1,600, so he's about 300 away. Bernie Sanders still has over 1,000, which is no small piece of the pie. So will be interesting to see what this looks like. Oh,
jeez. We have to go back to the protests.
You sound like it's bad news.
A 13-year-old boy was killed by police in Crown Heights.
Where's Crown Heights?
Oh, what do you think? People think this thing's going to end now? No.
Where's Crown Heights?
I'm trying to figure out. I think that's 77th Prince. Yeah, that's Crown Heights in New York City. That's NYC.
You guys have seen V for Vendetta, right? Where that one fingerman kills that girl.
So
wow,
what I'm
Crown
getting at
is really close to where coronavirus was really hurting the boroughs. So this is, it's New York City.
Yeah, it's NYPD 77th Precinct, which has kind of a colorful history. According to initial reports that are confirmed, 15 plus shots fired.
13-year-old, you said?
13-year-old.
Oh, that's so tragic. That's so tragic. I mean, it's terrible. I have a 13-year-old, basically. They're not... they don't even look like adults. That's terrible.
And I think the police in general have, not only the police, but how do I broach this calmly? I need to preface this with I'm white. Police coupled with white residents of metropolitan areas in general, we have a history of being extremely tone deaf.
How are the police going to justify that, though? Like the killing of a 13-year-old? What are they going to say? You shouldn't have been there?
I would just say that police in the U.S. were able to justify last year a 20-something-year-old petite female in transport restraints, shooting herself in the back of the head twice at a downward 50-degree angle.
Don't describe it. It's
Well, no, that one needs a description.
Oh yeah, right.
Because it's
absolutely no. But that wasn't my question, though. Like how are they going to justify that? I mean, like really, like especially in the middle of all this, like
because
they're in deep.
The answer that isn't graphic, because support the police, thin blue line, blue wall of silence, blue lives matter. 4 cops got hurt in Yokelstan someplace. A cop was killed when a vehicle struck him last month. We had our thing in Vegas here. Bobby can't pitch baseball with his son because he recklessly chased a suspect and dislocated his shoulder, so that justifies it all. Because we should give them all the benefit of the doubt.
All right, so I'm having trouble locating the Crown Heights information, so we'll have to find out if that's true. It'll probably, it takes a while to really get confirmed.
There's video of it already that I intentionally didn't even mention.
Oh, thank you. There's
New York City Scanner has picked it up. New York One has picked it up.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably a real thing, but it just goes to show people are having these protests to really call out the police, and bring attention to the things that they've been doing, and the death of individuals Mr. Floyd, so George Floyd. is just continuing. They don't seem to understand. This has been going on for almost a week now.
Oh, geez, this is just a horrid tragedy all around. And again, we're not in the era where we can necessarily trust what the police say here, but apparently the 13-year-old had a firearm, and police shot the 13-year-old
Well, we're in an
19
era.
times.
Oh my God, we're in an era where you can't really believe it until after a few hours of confirmation.
And an interesting thing is, so on the social media aspect, and we have to take this with a grain of salt, because this is the first time I've come across the video. Apparently, the video keeps getting deleted, but there is video of the shooting.
We'll know more later.
Yeah, that's one where I think we're going to have to sit on till morning.
Yeah. One other thing. The back to politics again with Stephen King losing his Iowa seat. He was outspoken. I think he was aligned with Trump, wasn't he? So is this a sign?
Big time.
Yeah, is this a sign that people are starting to rebel?
No, because I did some research and his opponent's aligned with Trump.
So that may not have been a factor.
Well, this guy was on the outs of the Republican Party.
When you lose committee seats like that, and you're that senior level, you pretty much lose all your power. But that kind of leads me to an interesting thing, with tying into the current movement. I mean, let's face facts here. Let's be real honest. Has my party now, because I used to be a Republican, now I'm a Democrat, has my party really done much better at addressing issues like systematic racism and police violence? I'd say no, it hasn't. Because these same party leaders, I know she's a favorite of everybody's, but Nancy Pelosi's a great example of this, have voted for time and time again to back things like a more pervasive intelligence state, expanded law enforcement powers and agency powers, acts such as the various defense authorization acts, stuff like that curtail civil rights over and over again. And yet we see this performative dance from, for example, again, Nancy Pelosi, on how much she supports the black community and is into civil rights and all that stuff. But her voting record just doesn't match it at all.
Mm. All right. I got to wrap up. Do you want to stay on, McLeod, or are you still there? Did you fall asleep?
I'm still here, but I should probably wrap up as well.
Aren't we? Because I don't think we're getting any more live footage going on.
Yeah,
you're not going to. You should end the stream.
I want to end the stream on the little girl hugging the alpaca, because that was actually really cute.
That was actually really good. Yeah.
ACAB alpaca is our new hero.
I think Portland gave me some hope. That was amazing.
Oh yeah, did you see the still that I posted earlier on my Twitter, Matterall?
No.
I took a couple of stills and I posted one that I thought was just gorgeous. You could tell that they had the kind of setting sun going on around the bridge and everything, and everybody laid down and stuff like that. But I guess they're going to be laying down the rest of the night because the police are spraying them, pepperballing them, and beating them.
All right, man.
Because the answer to police violence, everybody, is more police violence.
I was hoping we could be lighter, but this topic is just dark, and it is dark.
It is. I want to apologize to everybody, the few people that have been listening, that it has been a dark, somber, sometimes bordering on morbid mood. I want to say I'm sorry to all of you that this is happening, and especially if you're like a 20-something, that you're having to go through this, because the truth is, us 40 and 50-somethings should have fixed it.
Yeah, well, hopefully there's better days ahead. So thanks, Naz, for the video. Thanks, A's, for the stuff they provided earlier on. Everybody be safe out there. We're looking at the alpaca now. And thanks, Victor, for walking us through a lot of stuff, military and police-wise. Thank you guys for watching. I can't believe we had a group watching real-life stuff from Talking in Stations, but it doesn't surprise me. It's all very interesting. It's very intelligent people play this game. All right. McLeod, up to you.
All right, yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you some other time.